We're going to go ahead and start with the Kansas Public Disclosure Commission, and we're going to start with the fiscal analyst, Ariana. Welcome to committee. A little high for you, isn't
Yes.
it?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Today I'll be presenting the budget for the Kansas Public Disclosure Commission, formerly known as the Governmental Ethics Commission. I'm going to note that the agency is here with us. The Kansas Public Disclosure Commission FY 2026 revised estimate totals $889,000 in all funds, which represents less than 1% of the statewide total expenditure. The SGF, or the State General Fund, for FY 2026 that are requested are $589,000. And I'll note that that's less than 1% of the statewide SGF totals. If you could please turn your attention to page 3. The budget and policy snapshot summarizes the SGF reappropriation, including the agency lapse for FY 2026. And also it shows the FY 2027 legislative pay plan. If you could please turn your attention to page 4 for the summary of expenditures. I'm going to note that the all funds increase in FY 2021 was related to the conversion of a part-time attorney to a full-time position. That's why that expenditure is up for the all funds. And for FY 2024, there was an increase related to the legislator adding about $23,000, including $15,000 SGF for salary adjustments for most state employees for the pay plan. And for FY 2026, there's an increase from the 2025 actual because there was vacancies in FY 2025 for the agency. If you could please turn your attention to page 5. The agency only has state operations, so no other assistance. The expenditure by category table shows that 79.9% of the agency's budget is in salaries and wages for FY 2026, and about 19.1% is in contractual services. And if you could please turn your attention to page 6 for the expenditures by classification. Once again, I'm going to note for FY 2025, the actuals is down due to the vacancies for that fiscal year. And I'm going to note that when we mean fee other services, that's related to the Office 365, computer rental, IT administration fee, accounting. That also includes Westlaw, R-Base, which is a statistical software. That also includes job-related training, such as the Cultural Conference, and also includes like the monumental building charge. And for the fees, professional services, that includes the conflict counsel with the attorney, reporting fees, the Cultural membership, Sunflower Estate, so newspapers, and also surety bond. And when we say rents, that includes building rent, the water cooler expenses, copper expenses, Adobe licenses, and employee parking for rents. And if you could please turn your attention to page 8 for the analysis of the Kansas Public Disclosure Fee Fund. So the funding source for this fee fund is candidate filing fees, lobbyist registration fees, public action committee fees, and registration fees. And it also, in the table, provides a breakdown by category expenditures of how those funds will be used. If you could please turn your attention to page 9 for the fiscal 2026 analysis. The FY 2026 approved budget for the Kansas Public Disclosure Commission, including reappropriations, totals $899,000 with 8.5 FTE positions. This includes approximately $566,000 from the SGF and about 322,000 from the fee fund. The agency revised estimate reflects a net decrease of about $23,000. And for item 1, the approved budget, the 2025 legislature passed in SB 125, which included appropriations and adjustments, the 1.5% SGF lapse, which is noted in the table and in the summary below, and also the 2025 pay plan. For item 2, the SGF reappropriation is $23,565. The agency plans to spend the unspent funds on computer equipment purchases, office equipment purchases. If you turn your attention to page 10, increase operating costs, as well as professional development, which includes the COJO conference, newspaper subscriptions, and the remaining funds will be reappropriated to offset fluctuations in operating expenditures. Item 3 shows the 1.5% lapse of SGF reappropriations. And for the all other adjustments, the agency revised estimate for FY 2026 includes a decrease of $23,000 or 2.6% below the approved amount of 912,000. And this includes the removal of the $8,400 SGF lapse that was applied to the 2026 approved budget. This was a technical adjustment between the approved and the revised estimate. Also, there was a decrease in salary and wages, and this is primarily related to reduced employer contributions to health insurance. The agency revised estimate includes lower fringe benefits for at least one budgeted full-time position, so it's related to employee benefit selections. These decreases are offset by increases in contractual services, such as the database access fees, postage, travel assistance, and new office furniture. And if you could please turn your attention to page 12 for FY 2027 analysis. The FY 2027 approved budget for Kansas Public Disclosure Commission totals $885,000 with 8.5 FTE positions. And this includes about $554,000 from the SGF, with the remainder 330 in the fee fund. The agency revised estimate reflects a net increase of $8,920, including an increase of $17,688, and that increase is increase in the FGF is primarily related to the legislative pay plan. And for all other adjustments, that was related to reduce employer health contributions similar to FY 2026. There was also similar adjustments in contractual services with increase in out-of-state meal and lodging for the COJO conference. And there was also an increase in computer hardware. Any questions for FY 2026 and FY 2027, Madam Chairwoman?
Does anyone have any questions? Representative Melton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, I do have a question on the decrease in salaries and wages of the $18,942 for health insurance. So is this a charge that could come back to us if we had, that employee went somewhere else and we had to offer benefits to a new employee? Is this just because that employee didn't need our benefits?
I can't speak to the, apologize, Madam Chairwoman. I can't speak to the exact details, but I know that's related to, like I say, the elections, and like I said, I can't get into the details of it, but that's related to health benefits. But I can ask the agency for more information. But
I'm just wondering if it's a temporary deduction that could come back. Another, like, I don't ever take health care because I have it through my husband. So it's, I mean,
think
is it the
that's-
same kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
They may have an employee that retired that had a family.
Okay,
a
I see.
spouse, And then now they have a single employee that's not getting extra
full.
health benefits. So that's something that fluctuates on a regular basis
Okay, thank you.
for everyone, I think. Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple small questions, just in comparison to the things that we covered yesterday. So on page 4, at the bottom, in that bottom box down there, yesterday, consistently, all of the documents that we had the CPI number, like the 5-year change at the clear to the right-hand side said 11.6, and then the 10-year change was marked at 33.1, and then the bottom box said not available. But basically, it had a comparison so that we could look at the box there that says 53.6 of what their growth has been as far as all funds comparison to the consumer price index of 33.1. So if you were to go back and put that in, if we go through this document again later or whatever, that'd be nice. Are you with me on that? The documents that we got yesterday had those figures in it, so you could do a comparison. And then I think I sent an email last night back. So I had a question. The box has what the total amount of fees that this agency is receiving, but almost all of the agencies that we did yesterday, they told what their fee was. So, how much is it for filing for a legislator? Or how much is it filing for a lobbyist? Those figures, I'm not seeing any of those figures in there. It's got the total revenue, but not the fee schedule, right? So that would be nice to have that information. And then, yes, ma'am.
Representative, I think that the filing fees are on page 14 on the very back page.
And I missed that last night.
That's very possible. It happens
see it.
to
I see it
all
now.
of us.
Well, thank you. I mean, was that on there last night of those emails that came out and I missed that? Oh, okay.
Yes, I think so. I think it's just that pesky little last page that sometimes gets missed.
Well, and when you're trying to look on it as far as your computer kind of thing. And just a general question. So, I know there's been some movement, but, one of the things that comes up in the frequently asked questions is, where are you located? So where is this office now located?
Madam Chairwoman, the office is located in the Mills Building. The Mills Building, I don't know if they have an
Thought it
address,
was-
but the Mills Building.
It was in a new building, new
Ma-
docking building.
Madam Chairwoman, so the agency did have a request last session to move, but that was not approved, but they're still in Mills Building.
Do you have an address for the Mills building?
So since they're not moving, then, that was a discussion, so there won't be any change in rent or anything coming up if they're not moving.
Moving expenses.
Thank you.
Sorry, excuse me, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes.
So I believe that the agency had a new lease. So I know the rent did probably, had some maybe fluctuation from the previous lease, but they do have a new lease. And I will get that address to you. Yes, ma'am.
Right. Yes, Jacob.
Madam Chair, I have the address for the committee from the Kansas Public Disclosure Commission's website. It is 901 South Kansas Avenue, Topeka.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, did the acting executive director want to come up at all? Give you a chance to introduce yourself. Welcome to committee. Please please give us your name as well.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and representatives. I am Jennifer Schneider. I'm acting executive director. I just assumed this position December 14th, so I'm playing catch up on everything.
Come on.
I also am the local campaign finance supervisor, and we have a filing deadline this week, so doing a lot of extra.
You don't want to be here? Is that what you're
Oh,
trying
well,
to tell
no,
me?
it's fine. Actually, this is a learning experience. I've never had to look at the budget in this manner before, so I am trying to catch up and learn some things and try to answer questions. One of the questions as an answer is that we are at 901 South Kansas. I know that some former executive directors, we went through 4 of them last year, if you count the interim and the actings. One of the initial he did look at some other positions, other places to move, but it wasn't cost effective. It didn't have what we needed. Also, they tried to keep us close to the Capitol. So just the combination didn't work. We did look at the new building, but the rent was extremely higher than what we pay now. So we
Right.
have stayed there. I don't know if in the future the new director will look again, but and they did just raise our rent. Our building sold, we got a notice December 31st. Our building is now owned by KC Residents LLC. So I think it's back to being a more local owner. It was out of California. And our rent did go up about $400 a month. They didn't even give us notice. They just kind of sent us the new bill for the new quarter. So I do believe that Sunshine is looking into that situation since they didn't give us notice and didn't give us a new contract.
Okay. Is that, we can talk to Ariana about that, whether she needs to adjust that.
I looked.
Or is it reflected in your?
Leighton did send me some documents earlier, and it looked like they did ask for a rent increase maybe for fiscal year, but I don't know if it was in reflection of that or just in reflection of cost of living, so I'm not really sure if that part was included.
Okay. I will tell you, as I look and asking for the reappropriation of the 1.5% and what wasn't spent last year will not be recommended by me in appropriations. So just a little advance warning. All right. And that's not just because it's you. It's going to be everyone.
I think there was a memo on that also, and some of this is information that was carried on from past, so
We'll give you a grace period.
thank you. Well,
But, and we'll let you get back to your filing deadline things.
we are in the process of interviewing for a new executive director, so by the next time you need individuals, it might be somebody different, but.
All right, well, a revolving door. All right, well, thank you for being here and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll move on then to the Office of Administrative Hearings, and that would be Molly Pratt, our fiscal analyst from KLRD. Welcome to committee, Molly.
Hi, good morning, Chairwoman Rossinger and members of the committee. My name is Molly Pratt, as the Chairwoman said, and I will be providing the review of the Office of Administrative Hearings budget request for fiscal years 2026 and 2027. The mission of the Office of Administrative Hearings, before I begin, the Executive Director is here and will be available to clarify anything.
Where's the executive director? All right, thank you.
I should
We can glare at you if we want to while we're doing this. All
I
right.
should note he's the acting executive director.
Oh, so we can't truly put him on the hot seat, huh? All right.
Um, The mission of the Office of Administrative Hearings is to conduct efficient, fair, and impartial hearings for constituents and other affected parties who contest the actions of state agencies. Through administrative law judges, the OAH conducts adjudicative proceedings for a variety of state agencies in accordance with the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act. The 6 agencies that most frequently utilize OAH services make quarterly retainment payments. All other agencies make payments to the OAH based on hourly services. And I will provide a little bit more detail on this once we get to page 5. Since the OAH receives its funding from agencies that utilize their services, expenditures for the agency are categorized as off budget in order to avoid double counting payments from one state agency to the next. On page 2, you'll find the summary of expenditures with a 10-year history. On the bar graph, or the line graph, I'm sorry, you'll notice that there has been a slight increase since fiscal year 2018 or 2019. The majority of that is due to the administrative law judges receiving pay parity with district judges a few years ago. On page 3, you'll find additional details on the expenditures. The bottom provides details on the expenditures by category. All of their expenditures are categorized as state operations, and there's more detail on this on page 4. Moving to page 5, I'll provide a very brief description of the Administrative Hearings Office Fund. For the agency, the budgeted amount of expenditures is divided among the 6 agencies that utilize the agency's services the most based on a 3-year average of past usage. Those agencies are the Department for Children and Families, Department of Health and Environment, Division of Healthcare Finance, Kansas Department of Labor, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and the Kansas Civil Service Board within the Department of Administration. The quarterly payments include direct hearing costs such as court reporters, interpreters, and travel expenses. State agencies or governmental entities, including counties that are not among the most frequent users of OAH services, pay an hourly rate of either $100 or $115 plus direct hearing costs. On page 6, you'll find the analysis for fiscal year 2026. Item 1 just mentions that the agency was approved for a budget of $2.2 million in off-budget expenditures in fiscal year 2026. The agency, in item 2, you'll note that the agency is decreasing their estimate for fiscal year 2026 by $97,824. This is due entirely to the agency budgeting less for employee pay, including pay for both regular and temporary employees. This is primarily due to one attorney position being reclassified as a legal analyst position. In addition, previously vacant positions are now being filled. And similarly, the agency is anticipating expending less on contributions for fringe benefits. And would you like me to move on to, okay. So on page 7, you'll find the analysis for fiscal year 2027. The agency is requesting a decrease from their approved amount in fiscal year 2026 of about $82,000. This would provide the agency a total of $2.1 million for fiscal year 2027. Item 1 is pretty much the same as in fiscal year 2026. The agency is decreasing the amount for pay of employees by about $90,000. The reduction, again, is due to one attorney position being classified as a legal analyst position, in addition to previously vacant positions that the agency believes will remain filled, such as one legal analyst position. Item 2 discusses the all other adjustments within various categories of expenditures for fiscal year 2027. Namely, there is an increase of about $30,000 for computer and database upgrades, including updating the agency's website. The OAH has a goal of adding technological upgrades to the administrative hearings courtroom and modernizing aspects of the administrative claims process to make the procedure more streamlined for agencies and claimants. The agency's e-file system was custom designed and requires annual maintenance and periodic software programming to provide enhanced features. Likewise, the e-file portal leads to, or the agency states that the e-file portal leads to cost savings for the state because agencies save resources by not having to print, copy, and mail a ton of forms to the OAH, and other agencies also will save on office supplies and staff time to assemble the materials. In addition, the OAH is contemplating the possibility of creating an identification number for attorneys so that the attorneys could complete one e-filing consent form and have access to all of their administrative hearings claims. My understanding is this would alleviate the time spent by attorneys on the claims. Additional adjustments include a decrease of about $11,000 for job-related training and travel. The agency is specifically budgeting less for training and conferences, which in turn reduces the amount for travel fares and meals and lodging. And finally, the agency is decreasing communication and professional services expenditures by about $10,000. Specifically, the agency is reducing the budget for intergovernmental communication services, since more funding will be expended on computer and data services. And finally, the agency reduced the budget for professional and other fees and other contractual services while slightly increasing the budget for membership dues and court reporter fees. And with that, I'm happy to stand open for questions.
Hey, does anyone have any questions? We're a little light on our committee today. And it's a light committee anyway. Representative Amix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Molly, and maybe this is for the director, but was this the office that had the trouble with court reporters last year, having enough? Okay.
No.
It's too early in the morning to remember, so anyway.
Madam Chair, I think we'll get to that agency in a few weeks.
It's too early.
You'll have time to ask.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Molly. Would you like to come up, Mr. Snell? Thanks for being here. Introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Snell. I am the continuing acting director of the Office of Administrative Hearings. I'm now 3.5 years in and proud to maintain that acting director status, I guess. And I've had the opportunity now to appear. I know this is my second time before Madam Chair and this committee, and having appeared for at least the last 3 or 4 years, or last 3 years before the committee as well, and have worked with the previous director coming before you. You'll notice I've given you 3 things. One, I gave you our written testimony, which I went through and prepared. And as I noted last year, Representative Riley and I had spoke after legislative session a couple of years ago, and there were a number of questions that were raised. And so I try to make sure that our written testimony addresses those questions up front. And quite frankly, if you have additional questions that you want addressed as part of this process, I'm happy to include that information. We want to be as open with you as we possibly can with regards to what we do, how we do it, and what it costs for us to do it. And so if you just ask the information, I'm more than happy to provide it to you. With regards to that written testimony, the only thing that I would really mention at all is we did add an additional agency to our roster this year that we could potentially be providing services to that had not signed with us before. That was the Kansas Houses Resourcing Corporation. They're at the end of the list there on page 3. I was also recently contacted by the Department of Education. They have a process for handling cases that get raised by parents regarding IEPs and services provided by school districts to their children. They typically go through a hearing officer. That hearing officer is produced from a list that's maintained by the Department of Education. We've never been on that list before. Our office has served as review officers, meaning that once that hearing is conducted by that hearing officer to make a decision between the district and the parent, then we get a chance to review that to make sure that it was done according to statutes, regulations, and policies. It was recently asked if we could actually submit ourselves to being hearing officers because they've had a case or cases that have come up where they've actually exhausted their list of hearing officers. So we are going to start doing that. It's going to require us to enter into contracts with school districts to provide services, but it will be on an individual basis. We're excited because it just gives us that opportunity to provide that service to an additional entity of government. But it is going to be something new that's coming up here in the very near future. And like I say, we're working on the details on that. In fact, I spent an hour on the phone yesterday just trying to get a start on how that's going to work. We're also looking forward to the change that happened last legislative, I believe it was last legislative session, the creation, if you will, of the Kansas Office of Early Childhood, which takes from a number of agencies that we already work with, takes cases that we already handle for those agencies. For instance, child care licensing that we do for the Department of Health and Environment. So we're looking forward to working with the new staff of that agency to start providing those services for them as well in this upcoming year. I did mention, you asked about if we own a rent space. We do rent space at this particular time, and I hopefully there's nobody watching that's going to get too offended by this. We are looking at the possibility of trying to move. We are constrained by our space at this particular point. If we had to expand, we could not. We do not have any room to add additional folks. And quite frankly, my ALJs are getting a little tapped out as far as the number of cases that they're having to handle on a regular basis, not because the number of cases has grown exponentially, but because the type of cases that we're handling are more difficult. Quite frankly, the simpler cases are getting handled by the agencies, which is what the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act encourages. And so we're taking on the cases that take on more
of a sticky widget.
Exactly. And so they require more time by our ALJs. They require more time to prepare the decisions. And so at some point we may, and especially if the legislature does add any additional responsibilities to us, we might get to a point where we would have to add additional staff, and we can't do it in our current area.
Okay.
Our FTEs are full. For the first time since I've worked for the Office of Administrative Hearings, having started in 2018, all 14 positions are full. And since I know some of them are watching, I think they all are thrilled to be working for the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I'm certainly thrilled to have them there.
We're thrilled too.
And then the last thing that I would mention, two things that have happened over the last year. One, I gave you a copy of our second annual report that we've done. This is something that I had come up with because I wanted to create more transparency within our office, both for legislature, but also just for the general public. So it's available to everybody. It gives an idea of the different work that we do in the office and kind of gives a behind the scenes look into how we handle the things that we handle on a regular basis. You know, the percentage of, or the percentage increase in cases, how it breaks down by agency, how it breaks down by our decisions. All of that information is there. And quite frankly, Representative Riley, if you come up with additional areas that you'd like me to consider including in a future annual report, I will certainly take that into consideration for the annual report for 2026, for 2026. The last thing is, and I mentioned this at the beginning at last year that we were going to be doing this, we revised our webpage. It's at oah.ks.gov. And the idea behind it was to provide a lot more information for individuals utilizing our services. Because we get a lot of people, 81% of the people who utilize our office do not have an attorney. And so they're coming into this with no legal experience whatsoever, except what they may have learned on Google. And so I wanted to make sure that we provided information to them so that they could protect their interests as they were working themselves through our process. And that was one of the primary drives behind the website redesign that we did, was to provide that information as well as just to make it easier to access that information within the webpage. And I think we've accomplished that. It took us a month to work out the bugs. I wasn't the one who designed the original website, and so there was some connectivity issues that we ran into, but I think we've got it all taken care of now. And now we're going to start working on the e-filing portal, which is also our case management system, and that'll be for this next fiscal year. That's our project, so.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Snell? I'd like to know your magic sauce to lower your budget, since this is very refreshing to look at. So sometime you can maybe put that in writing and then we can figure that out and add that to every other agency.
Been
So-
doing budgets now since about 2006 between here and the Attorney General's Medicaid Fraud and Abuse Division. So I've learned it's a lot better to keep it as close to what it's actually going to be rather than trying to inflate it to cover things, and I'll figure it out later if I have to. So I've just been trying to work it back down to where it needed to be.
God bless you. All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll move on to the Judicial Council and we get the KLRD's Molly Pratt back up again. I think you
Oh,
need
I'm
to-
sorry, this was not on.
You might need to, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, and then I'll start over because the microphone wasn't on. My name is Molly Pratt, and I'm a fiscal analyst with the Legislative Research Department, and I will be presenting the budget summary for the Judicial Council. Here today is the new executive director, and she will be able to clarify questions that the committee might have. The Judicial Council was created by the 1927 Legislature to study and make recommendations on the legal system in Kansas. The 10-member council is composed of one Kansas Supreme Court justice, one judge on the Court of Appeals, 2 district judges, 2 legislators, and 4 attorneys. The agency employs 5 full-time staff. The agency regularly identifies general areas of improvement and assigns projects to standing advisory committees. On occasion, the Judicial Council will create ad hoc committees to study specific legal issues, such as defendant competency in municipal court cases. In addition to hosting a variety of committees, the agency provides hundreds of legal forms to the public on its website and authors and distributes publications that cover many legal topics. On page 2, you'll find a budget and policy snapshot for the agency. The only item of note really for the agency's budget is their request for hospitality spending authority for fiscal year 2027. And I'll provide more detail on that once we get to the 2027 analysis. On page 3, you'll find a summary of expenditures. You'll note on the middle chart that the SGF amounts are blank until fiscal year 2024. That is because the agency used to be entirely fee-funded, but they became funded by the State General Fund in fiscal year 2024. Page 4 also provides more detail on expenditures, including expenditures by category. Once again, all of the agency's expenditures are in the category of state operations, and page 5 provides more detail on those expenditures. Moving on to page 6, you will note that the agency is not requesting a change to their budget from the previously approved amount in fiscal year 2026 of approximately $743,000. The approved budget for this agency does include approximately $13,000 to provide salary increases for most state employees based on the Department of Administration's market survey last year. Item 2 and item 3 discuss the reappropriations. The agency reappropriated about $28,000 in unspent SGF funds. Expenditures budgeted for in-person committee meetings were reduced because some meetings were conducted virtually. And the committee will likely find that that is a running theme in the agency's budget. The agency cannot accurately predict how many committees will be meeting, how many ad hoc committees will need to be created, and the number of committee members who will choose to not receive their per diem, which is usually a decent amount for the Judicial Council. So item 3 just discusses that the agency is lapsing their reappropriations because of the fluctuations, essentially. All other adjustments include changes to individual categories of expenditures. For example, the revised estimate includes a decrease of about $20,000 for salaries and wages in fiscal year 2026. This is due entirely to the retirement of the former executive director. The agency estimate also includes an increase in the pay of temporary unclassified employees. And this is just how the agency budgets for the per diem and subsistence payments to committee members. When compared with the previously approved amount in fiscal year 2026, the agency is budgeting for 15 additional full committee meetings and 10 subcommittee meetings for a total of 70 full committee meetings and 24 subcommittee meetings in fiscal year 2026, not 2027, sorry. However, once again, the agency does not know how many of these meetings will be conducted virtually, nor how many members will elect to receive their payment, which makes it difficult for the agency to accurately budget for those expenses. And finally, the reduction in salaries and wages spending is offset entirely by an increase in contractual services and commodities. The adjustment for contractual services is due to website hosting fees and the implementation of an online payment portal for the sale of their publications. The adjustment for commodities is due to the agency replenishing the supply of custom binders provided to individuals upon purchase of legal publications. If you have ever seen the binders, they're not just binders you can go buy at Target or Walmart. They're really thick. Okay, and moving on to page 8, you'll find the analysis for fiscal year 2027. Overall, the agency is requesting an increase of $4,643, all from the State General Fund, above the previously approved amount for fiscal year 2027. Item 1 concerns salaries and wages. Once again, the agency is decreasing their estimate for salaries and wages for fiscal year 2027 by approximately $34,000. This again is due to the retirement of a former executive director. The agency estimate also includes an increase in the pay of temporary unclassified employees, once again to the agency not being able to accurately predict how many members will attend committees in person and choose to elect their per diem payments. Item 2 is the hospitality spending authority request that I mentioned back at the beginning. The agency requests spending authority for official hospitality expenditures in the amount of $5,000 for beverage and lunch expenses for committee members. Beverage and food would only be provided to committee and advisory committee meetings that are held in person and last more than 3 hours and extend beyond midday. According to the agency, a large percentage of members waive their right to statutory compensation, thereby volunteering their time to attend in-person meetings in Topeka. The request would not increase the Judicial Council's recommended SGF allocation for fiscal year 2027. It would merely allow them to expend money on hospitality. And item 3 on page 9 discusses the all other adjustments. Once again, offsetting the salaries and wage adjustments, the agency request includes $38,410 in additional spending for fiscal year 2027. Most of the adjustments are due to increases in contractual services. The agency is budgeting more for software maintenance due to increased cost associated with website hosting fees and their implementation of the online payment portal. Finally, the agency is budgeting more for printing and binding due to the agency planning to distribute 4 publications rather than 3. If the committee remembers from last year, the agency had difficulty determining how much the state printer would charge the agency, and that trend seems to be continuing. So they did increase the budget expenses for that just in case it fluctuates again. And with that, I'm happy to stand open for questions.
Why is it difficult to get fees from the printing office.
Madam Chair, you would probably have to ask the agency for more information on that.
I think that's something that we can work on. That's a little irritating. Let's see, transparency in government. You can't even get the prices from your own colleagues. All right. Thank you, Molly. Laura, I don't know whether you wanted to come up or not. Just say hi, introduce yourself, please.
Hi. Oh,
You have to turn it on. If the light's on, your microphone's on.
that better? Nope. Is that good? Okay. Thank you. Hi, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Laura Nordgren. I am the new Executive Director of the Judicial Council, replaced Nancy Strauss, who you've worked with probably for years. Sad to let her go to retirement, but also very happy for her. I have been an attorney with the agency for the last 10 years. So I'm very happy to now take on the role of the Executive Director. Question about printing costs. I'd like me to speak to that. Some of that is because the state printer prices have fluctuated over the last years, from my understanding. But some of it is also due to the fact that we can't always predict exactly how large our supplements will be each year because, and we were planning to bring it with us, but we had a parking problem. Sorry about that. And due to the rain. So I don't have the book with me, but if you've seen them, they're very large. And the supplements can sometimes be whole chapters that we supplement each year. Sometimes it can be a page in a chapter that we change out each year. So it can fluctuate pretty greatly. So that printing cost is why we estimate it. We also estimate based on the number of people who have subscribed to the supplement from the previous years, but sometimes people cancel that. Sometimes we do have to get more because then we have to reprint books, maintain some books in our stock for when people want to buy them. So we're talking about physical books. The books are available online for a fee. We sell that. Also, that's provided to all attorneys and judges in the state. The Office of Judicial Administration pays for that for all attorneys. We have a book if you would like to see it now.
Oh, someone brought one over.
Yeah. And that would also help you visualize the binders, that expense. We did go ahead, since we did have some room in this year's budget due to salary decreases. We thought it's about time. We were at our 5-year mark and getting low on binders. So we went ahead and ordered those. And then it's this big. And we have 5 of these. There's actually slightly different binders for some of the other ones. And so we don't anticipate buying these again for another 5 years.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, 70 meetings a year, more than once a week. So are those open to the public?
They are.
So how do I get on a list so I can listen in to those meetings? Can you give me that information afterwards?
Yes, I can.
Or might funnel it through Jacob and then he can send it to the committee if they're interested as well.
Okay.
All right. What was the 24 number that I heard after the 70?
It might have been, that was the number of subcommittee meetings.
Subcommittees, that's
That
their.
we might have versus whole committee meetings. Yeah, those subcommittees, those are usually on virtual. They're usually held online because it's usually 3 people or so.
All right. Are there any other questions? Thanks for being here. Thanks for hauling your suitcase here to bring the book here. So I have seen those books. As my husband's an attorney, are you moving to 4 instead of 3 to maybe make them a little bit smaller?
That is in the possible works when we do a new edition. This one specifically is the pattern jury instructions for criminal cases, which is why it's very full. And so we are on the edge of needing to split it into 2 books. We already have people that say they take it separately and put it in just regular binders themselves because this
Well,
is
that's always
hard.
possible, you know, but attorneys don't always like to do all those things by themselves. Of course, I'm sure they haven't. They give it to someone else to do. All right. Well, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. And thanks for coming over with that, you know, getting your workout in. All right. Okay, the next one is the Kansas Human Rights Commission, and that would be Joe Adams, our fiscal advisor. Oh, our legislative fellow. You reminded me of that yesterday.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Committee. As mentioned, I am Joe, the Legislative Fellow with KLRD, who's here to present on the Kansas Human Rights Commission. In attendance is also Ruth Glover, the Executive Director for the agency. In front of you this morning should be this document. To give you just a brief overview, the KHRC is the state agency responsible for enforcing laws that prohibit discrimination and ensure equal opportunity in employment, housing, and public accommodations. On this first page, as you'll notice, they do have SGF funding, so there are government funds to discuss. There are 2 pie graphs on that first page. They demonstrate the request of the agency against all agency requests in both SGF and all funds. Both are at less than 1%. On page 2, you can see a summary of expenditures going back 10 years. The final 2 years are 2026 and 2027 requests by the agency. Notably, just to get ahead of myself, the 2026 request is less than the amount approved by the legislature for this year. The other item I'll mention is that previously I've only handled biennials. This agency is not a biennial, so they do not have an approved 2027 budget. Looking past page 2 to page 3, you can see expenditures by major purpose. This breaks down how the agency spends their money. As you'll note, 100% of their funding goes towards state operations. And in 2 different formats for you to observe this data, both with a line chart as well as a numerical breakdown on the table. Turning to page 4, you can see these expenditures broken down by classification of individual items. A majority of it, or the lion's share, is used for salaries and wages, and then with the rest mostly spent on contractual services and a small minority spent on commodities. Turning to page 5, you can see the expenditures by program. They do recognize 3 programs, those being administration, compliance, and public information. As a brief aside, the administration category is actually an error by the DOB in prior years for the accounting system. The administration tab should have been put under compliance, but at this point it's impossible to remove. So as it looks like there are 3, there are actually 2. So just for your information, that's why the administration category only exists for 2 years and then disappears moving forward. Looking then to page 6, we're going to spend some time here. This is the expenditures by fund, and more importantly, the fee fund analysis. The agency has a federal fee fund, and they have an annual contract that they sign with the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, for the processing and resolution of discrimination complaints that fall both under state law and federal statutes, including Titles 7 in the Civil Rights Act, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1967, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the Genetic Information and Non-Discrimination Act, and the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. What I'm telling you is that there are discrimination laws that are at the state level, and there are discrimination laws at the federal level. And if you imagine them like 2 circles, there's an overlap in the middle of the Venn diagram where sometimes both have jurisdiction. In the instances where both have jurisdiction, the federal government will pay the Kansas Human Rights Commission $830 to finish these cases. In instances where the KHRC does not have jurisdiction, but the federal government does, and they provide them this information, they're paid $125 for an intake submission. Therefore, under this contract, the federal government has a payment arrangement effectively with the KHRC. Underneath this big block of text that explains basically that is the Employment Discrimination Federal Fund. These dollars are specifically the federal monies that are sent by the EEOC to the KHRC. As you'll note, the ending balance does trend down over time, and the agency has discussed this prior at the LBC, and I'm sure they will later if you ask. I believe that they'd raised the rates from $830, but I would ask the agency to correct me on that. Turning then to page 7, we get to the fiscal year 2026 analysis. This has an approved amount with the line item 1 budget of $1.8 million. There is a reappropriation of $680, which includes a lapse of 1.5%. That is line item 2. Notably, this was removed by the global motion made at a prior meeting or hearing, excuse me. Turning to page 8, we go to line item 3, which is the 1.5% lapse, which is $10 of the 680 amount that was given. And then line item 4 is the decrease that the agency has requested. You'll note that this is not an SGF decrease. It is from the federal funding that they use. The agency indicated that they were below the amount of staffing levels that they had expected to be at. And so in this way, they're just maintaining a cash balance on hand within their federal fund. They also recorded an increase in software rental and operating charges. However, this was offset by lower amounts for commodities such as stationery, office supplies, and data processing supplies. They also reduced spending on communication, printing, travel, and supply costs, again, to just help balance the budget. Turning to page 9 for the fiscal year 2027 analysis, as there is not an approved budget, this is an estimate for the agency moving forward. They did request an increase of $9,644 of state government funding. They indicated this was due to changes in cost indices for group health insurance rates for fiscal year 2027. And according to the agency, employer contribution rates for health insurance are projected to rise by 7.77% from fiscal years 26 to 27. They also included a minor reduction of SGF due to capers as a rate change as well. They also increased the amount from their federal budget by $992 and reduced their education and training fund by $619, leading to a total increase of their budget of $10,000 or so. With that, I believe I am ready for any questions if the committee is.
Does anyone have a question for Mr. Adams? I don't think so. So you got off easy on that one. Would the Ruth Glover like to come up and just say hi? Please come up and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Ruth Glover, and I am the Executive Director for the Kansas Human Rights Commission. We provided a handout with some of our performance achievements from fiscal year 2025 and some information about our budget. I'd be glad to go over that or answer any questions, whatever your preference is.
I'm not sure everyone read through that
Okay.
yet, but if you want to just peruse it and see if there's something that stands out and you wanted to ask her for.
Well, we'll just, or we could just do that, just a few quick highlights then maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And as Joe noted, we're asking for $74,680 less than what was approved last fiscal year. The main difference or the main driving reason for that reduction is we had positions that were filled in fiscal year 2025 that weren't filled at the beginning of fiscal year 2026. So we're asking for a lower salary amount because of those vacancies. We are asking for an increase in fiscal year 2027, mainly because we're hoping that those positions can be filled and can be maintained as being filled. In fiscal year 2025, we received 1,008 complaints. That was 15% more than what we received in the previous fiscal year, 134 more complaints than in the previous fiscal year. We were able to resolve 974 complaints, even though we were slightly short-staffed. We recovered on behalf of complainants $1,169,000. Those are monies that are paid directly from the respondent to the complainant in order to help make them whole for any losses because of the alleged discrimination. And we had an open inventory of 1,025 cases at the end of fiscal year 25. That increased by 34 cases from the previous fiscal year. But we think that that was still a significant achievement for us because we were short-staffed and we received 134 complaints more than what we had received the previous fiscal year. So even though the complaints increased by 134, the pending caseload only increased by 34. We continue our mediation project with Kansas Legal Services. We trained 8,122 individuals, either in person or online, during the fiscal year. We have an online harassment prevention training program. And of the 6,000 individuals who took that course, 64% said they had a full understanding of discrimination and harassment before they took the course. But after they took the course, they said 92% said they had a full understanding of harassment and discrimination. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Sounds pretty good. I don't see anybody raising their hand, so I don't want to make you wait, but I will tell you that appropriations does not look favorably on extra money for employees that haven't been hired.
Well, we don't budget for employees that haven't been hired.
You said you needed 74,000 more for the possibility of the positions that you'll fill. That's not usually a.
Well, what we're hoping is that we'll get those positions filled this fiscal year, and then those positions will continue into fiscal year 27.
Well, we will keep an eye on that. So, all right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Sorry you had to wait so long.
Thank you.
And is there anything, do we want to go back? Is there anything we want to put in our possible recommendations for when we come back in session for any of these agencies? Representative Amix.
Madam Chair, this is a question about something that you had said to one of the agencies before about something that you would not be recommending.
Right.
What was that again?
Any reappropriations or giving them 1.5% reduction back to the agencies.
Is that something that we as a committee will decide, or is that something?
We can recommend putting that back in, but appropriations this past year implemented that 1.5%. What we're trying to do is trying to get our spending under control. And that's a very small adjustment, but that's not, I have no desire to add that to any agency.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that, but I'm just wondering what our role is in that decision-making process.
Well, there are many decisions that we made last year that got changed in appropriations. So we can do our level best, and I can say how important something is for us, that we felt really strongly about that and fight for what we've done. Mostly it's in larger agencies. These smaller agencies usually don't have that problem.
Okay, understood. Just point of
Okay.
clarification.
Yeah, I understand. It was new information for me as well. So, okay, is there any other? Since we don't have any, we'll just. Oh yeah. Make sure you fill out your travel form for me, please, so I can sign them and y'all can get paid for coming to the Capitol today. Thank you, committee, for coming early. I know it was difficult. Thank you to staff that really stepped up their game. It was, this is a completely different year for me. So I appreciate everything that you guys have done and helped us with, because we wouldn't be able to do this without you. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting.